weather because it's really horrible out there. So thank you so much for coming. I would have stayed at home. So I will introduce my panellists in a minute, but I need to do some housekeeping first. So this is our first in-person event, Tempo event this year, and thank you to my team. They're downstairs. I'll thank them in a minute for letting people in and volunteering, because it's normally Alice that helps me with these, but she's unfortunately couldn't make it tonight, so I was really panicking. So there they are. Just saying thank you to you and Emily for helping me out this evening. So yeah, and also thank you for your generous donations for tickets. So we be making a donation to the Red Cross to help people affected by the crisis in Gaza. So thank you for your donations. And before we get started, just a couple of bits of housekeeping. If you need the toilet, they're through that door on the left, and there's a pass hanging off the cow's horn. I never thought I'd say that sentence, but you can take that and that'll get you back in again. If there is a fire alarm, we'll just follow the stairs down, I guess. There shouldn't be, but if there is, just get out. Also, the other thing to let you all know about is our conference, which is happening in June at the Barbican. And we have got some really good speakers lined up so far. So we've got Jen Schaefer from Netflix, we've got Daniel Small from Pinterest, we've got Heldene from Monzo, we've got Candy Williams, I'm trying to think off the top of my head who else we've got confirmed, Sarah Butcher. I think that's, I can always say her name wrong. And it's going to be a really good day at the Barbican, so if you haven't already, you can get your ticket at legally.tempo.com, and if you use the code LOVE20, you get 20% off. And also if you've got a team and you think your whole team might want to come, let me know and I can sort out a group discount for that. It is it's a relatively small conference because we try and keep it to like 120 people so that people can like really network and make connections, but also have like open and honest conversations. And then we like to have like Q&As with our speakers as well on stage, and you know, it's nice to talk about the bad stuff as well as the good stuff, because everybody has, you know, the same problems in content design leadership, so it's nice to be able to have like open conversations about that. So we try and keep it like a relatively cosy conference, and it's our first one in person, so it's going to be really good. And you can join virtually as well if you don't want to join in person. So on to tonight. We thought, because it's like, I was going to say the new year, but it's not really the new year now, is it? It's February. But we thought it was quite a good time to start thinking about how we might lead differently this year, and if there's, you know, things that we might want to change about how we lead and think more about leadership in a more mindful way. So that's the topic that we picked for this evening. So I'm going to introduce you to our panellists. So first up we have Lauren Pope. You might know Lauren from her 10 Things newsletter, which if you don't read it already, you should. And also she's created some really invaluable toolkits, so for things like content audits, so definitely have a look at Lauren's website. Lauren's an independent content strategist for charities, arts and culture organisations and non-profits, and started her own consultancy in 2018 to focus on helping organisations that put people and the planet before profit to build digital experiences that make the world better, fairer or more beautiful. So welcome, Lauren. Thanks. Next up we have Rashmi, who is co-founder of Leading Deeply. And I worked with Rashmi many years ago, like, I don't know, what, 15 years at Unilever. But when I saw that she'd set this up, I was like really intrigued. I was like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And Leading Deeply describes itself as leadership development that supports visionary leaders to journey inwards to enact lasting change in the outer world. So I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit more about that tonight. So welcome, Rashmi.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Ellen. Ellen is UX writing manager at John Lewis, where she manages UX writing team and leads UX content for the John Lewis brand. She's got over 18 years experience at places including BT, where we worked together, Royal Mail, Goldsmiths University and Microsoft. And I know Ellen is a very mindful leader as well, which is why I've invited her to join. She's very zen, which is why I've invited her to join us this evening. So welcome, Ellen. So I thought maybe we could just kick off with a bit of an intro from each person, but less of a focus, I guess, on the job you're doing per se, and more of a focus on what gets you out of bed in the morning and what compels you to do the work you do. So I will start at this end for that one. So Ellen, do you want to kick us off with that?
Yeah, always. What gets me out of bed? I have a 3-year-old. So today he woke up at 7:10. And I was like, oh my god,
that sounds like a lion.
So usually I'm up about 6. So yeah, but yeah, what actually what motivates me? I guess that's the question rather than my child being like, I want my Weetabix. Yeah, I think this is an excellent topic because I am extremely, maybe because I've been working for enough time, I feel like slightly older and I'm a bit more like considered in my life decisions. So I definitely think I'm more value driven than I definitely was when I was younger. So I try to be someone who thinks I'm doing something vaguely good day to day. So I think that's what motivates me day to day. I say that and then I don't know. I still work for someone selling clothes. Whatever, it's fine. But yeah, generally I think I am, as I'm getting older, I'm going the opposite. Everyone says you get older and you get a bit more like conservative and a bit more boring. I'm getting more like right on. So maybe that's what's happening.
Very nice.
Or I'm just haven't had enough sleep. I don't know which one it is.
And Rashmi, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I can relate to your 3-year-old. So I've got a 9 and a 5-year-old, so they get up a little bit late, I've got to say. But yeah, I mean, I've got to say it's difficult at the moment. I don't know about you guys, but getting up in the morning at the moment is really difficult. And I am finding that just my own motivation and just the lack of light is really impacting me. So even though I am quite a motivated person, I am really, just being honest, finding it quite hard. So I have been doing a few things that have been helping me actually lately. Trying to get up a bit earlier before the kids and sort of just do a little bit of, even if it's like 10 minutes of just reflection or just like mindful breathing or something very small. I'm also trying to get up and actually think about have one like positive thought as well, which is really helping me. But in general, I love the work that I've been doing for the last 18 years around sustainability. I was at Unilever for a long time. I'm now back there working around sustainable business and how do we, a lot of what you were saying as well, Laura, how do we help create a more equitable society? And so I'm really enjoying that work. And I think certainly in the last 5 years, been through quite a lot of life changes as well. I'm definitely much more unapologetic about what I'm going to work on and how I'm going to work, because I just do think that I just want to do meaningful work and work that I really enjoy. And so now that I'm able to do that a bit more freely, being a freelancer, I'm actually really motivated by that. For me, that just gets me up and out in the morning.
Nice. Do you find that similar? Because I was going to say you also.
Yeah, really similar of your answer. I am also finding it hard to wake up at the moment, like in a very literal sense. I'm tired. Yeah. The thing that literally gets me out of bed is my dog, like biting my ears, begging for attention. So that's why I get out of bed. I don't find going actually into office and into work because I really love and enjoy what I do at the moment. I feel so motivated and excited by it. So like in that sense, but I guess like I just love. It's so nerdy. I love working in content. And yeah, like kind of trying to find like these messy, complicated problems and hopefully trying to find a way to simplify them a bit. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I really sort of find like it's started to get a little bit lighter now in the mornings, hasn't it? Before 7. And I really found over the winter just getting up when it's dark, I'm like, no one should have to get up when it's still dark. It shouldn't be allowed. Because you just can't like get yourself going. And I think I'm like you, Rashmi, I have to get up before my kids and go and do some exercise or something, and then I feel like, okay, now I can start the day. But my motivation really goes in the winter, like when the weather's like this. My motivation to just get up and do stuff. So like, I just want to stay in bed. Great, thank you. So actually going back to the point that you just talked about, Lauren, where you're sort of saying you love what you do and you're just really enjoying what you do. You make very intentional decisions about who you work for and who you work with. And I do really admire your ability to stick by your values and not sell yourself out to capitalism like me. But I'd like to know, like, how hard has that been to do that?
Yeah, it's been really hard, and it's an ongoing practice because it's not that easy. So before I started working for myself and working with charities, I worked for a big agency. working for like the evilest of evil corporations, which I loved. It was a great experience. I learnt loads, but it got to a point where I was like, actually, like, I'm not motivated by this. I don't care. Like, what I'm doing is I'm actively making the world worse, and I can't really live with that. I didn't really have much experience working in the charity sector at all. I'd done a couple of small projects, and it took probably like 3 or 4 years to kind of build up to the point where it was all kind of non-profit clients and all clients where I felt my values aligned. The pandemic was actually the turning point for that, because I still had some kind of for-profit businesses like in my portfolio, and then the pandemic happened, and as you know, they all took the budget away from everything they possibly could. But on the other side of things, in the charity sector, suddenly there were problems everywhere. There was budget being unlocked, so I was really fortunate to kind of get some great opportunities from that. I guess the other thing I'd say about it is, like, the ongoing kind of thing is just becoming a bit more nuanced about the charity and non-profit sector, because it's not all great and it's not all fantastic organisations doing great work. There's some terrible practice, and you have to get good at quite like digging into finances and like who sponsors what and who's really kind of paying for different aspects of a charity's work. And I've definitely been caught out a couple of times where I've ended up working with organisations where if I knew then what I knew now, I wouldn't have worked with them. So yeah, I think you have to really kind of focus quite a lot on questioning, not just assuming that because it's a charity or an arts organisation it's unproblematic, because that is not the case.
Yeah, and I think that's even when you work for there's a lot, there's a lot out there as well. Even when you work for like a commercial organisation, there's a lot out there at the moment about greenwashing and companies saying that they're doing all these things and that they're sustainable and that they're zero carbon and all that kind of thing. And actually, once you get under the surface of it, they're putting a spin on it, shall I say. But yeah, I guess, like, because you're at Unilever, and Unilever is quite, I mean, even when I was there like 15 years ago, they're pretty good at the sustainability side of things, and often feels like, even though it is a big multinational, it often felt quite ethical. Does it still feel like it still feels like that?
Yeah, it definitely does. I do think, I think it's, at the end of the day, it's a large corporation, and as you mentioned, the company still sells fast-moving consumer goods, and like the fast-moving part is that they get used and they end up often in landfill. Yeah. So there's a lot of, I still have challenges sometimes with sort of, I left because I found the business model just didn't make sense to me. That was 9 years ago, and I moved into Philips, and that's working on healthcare and health technology, which I found really purpose-led and much more aligned actually to my own values, around sort of simplifying healthcare and helping create new pathways and sort of democratising healthcare as well, like making it more accessible to people and also make it more equitable. And that was some of the work I really enjoyed doing at Philips, was looking at race and gender equality across healthcare, and then you realise how unequal healthcare is, not just in the way it's distributed across the world, but also in just how we're training doctors and nurses and medical professionals in terms of the books. Like, how often do you see a non-white image in some of these medical textbooks? I actually worked on a project that was all about that, to try to work out, well, why is that the case? So I think every organisation you go and work with is always going to have a light side, and it's going to have a darker side. Yeah. And I think what's important is making sure you find a way, you do your own digging and your own research, and find a way that you can really align your values well. And the work I'm doing now at Unilever, which is really aligned to me, is about how do we evolve the culture in such a way that harnesses all the great stuff about the company, but also connects it much more to actually building more value across the business, because it has had a really tough time in the organisation. You'll see it in the press as well. The share price is much lower than it has been. Lots of issues around purpose, and is it too woke, people are saying, and that's absolutely not the case. And the work that we're doing now is to turn that around externally and internally, and help people realise that it still is a very, good, well-intended, well-meaning company that you should be proud to work for. However, there are things that we do need to change, and that's I've sort of found now my niche in that space, which I'm really enjoying. But I wouldn't say that's going to be, nothing's forever, but probably see myself there for 12 to 18 months and then move on to something else, because that challenge probably won't still be there at that point.
Yeah, that's so interesting because Ellen and I were just talking about this earlier. We were talking about the companies where there's some, controversy that hits the press, and but actually deep down you know that the company is trying to do good things and make things better, but there's always going to be, I think whoever you work for, there's always going to be some things that maybe you don't agree with, maybe you're not necessarily aligned
with. It's like
with.
jokes about working under capitalism. We all exist in capitalism. So nowhere's completely ethical. You wish, you dream, it doesn't exist. It absolutely doesn't exist. So the ethics piece is your personal. What can you take on, and what do you want to compromise on, and what can you not compromise on? But it's not. I mean, you can't. I think you'd be really short-sighted if you tried to think, oh, I could go in and change somewhere from the inside. That's the kind of mindset that I think actually be wary of that. But also what's the work environment other than ethics and things like that? It's the environment. You could work somewhere that maybe has got excellent ethics on paper, but then if you're going to be worked to the bone and be treated like crap, and I don't know, there's one of you trying to fight the fight, is that necessarily better than the opposite? So I think it's all these things you have to weigh up, don't you? But
yeah,
I'm so glad you mentioned capitalism so early. You said the word. But yeah.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day as well, we've all got to make money ourselves,
Yes.
We can't exist without making money. So you just got to, I think you're right, even if something doesn't, even if, I'm not going to go and work for a gambling company, for example, because it doesn't align with my values. However, if I found myself working in a company where, perhaps it's not 100% tick box of what I would want, I can try and think, well, what can I affect and how can I fulfill my values in this organisation? And what I'm sort of interested to know as well, how, I'm going to throw this to Rashmi first, but I'm really interested to know, what tips have you got for someone who wants to define their personal values and principles and figure out, what they are and how they could potentially become happier by working somewhere where they can fulfill those? How do you go about finding out what your...
Well, it's tricky, isn't it? Because there's so many external factors and we're all influenced by so many different things. I think also our brains, I think there's a stat somewhere that's your brain has 20,000 thoughts a day or something ridiculous like that. So there's just so much information coming in and out. And I think this is actually where some of the really helpful mindfulness practices can really come in. So of course there's this traditional thing where you look at the 3 circles, right? So you look at what you really enjoy. You look at the skills that you have, and then you also look at the demand that exists. And then of course in the middle, that should be your sweet spot. But in reality it doesn't really work like that. I mean, I think one thing that I have done, I was just doing a workshop yesterday on this with a group of leaders with a Leading Deeply piece, is this technique called free-fall writing. And it's just a technique where you take 5 minutes to pause and just pen to paper and you ask yourself a thought-provoking question. And yesterday we were doing this thing about how do you influence change actually within an organisation. And I asked the question, I said, right, so for 5 minutes write about, when I think about the organisation I'm working in, I feel ... And then if you just write for 5 minutes, that process is incredibly revealing. And even when you have, all thoughts are welcome, and even when you have a negative thought or you stop writing, you literally write whatever's in your head. So I've stopped writing, I don't know what to say, ... And it is a very interesting process just going through it, but also what emerges. And I think doing things like that to actually get out of your cognitive and out of your brain, to really just experience what are you actually feeling, are often the best ways to give you a sense of what's important to you. So I say, of course, do all the Venn diagrams and get the feedback, and that's all really important, but probably a bit of silence and a thought-provoking question will probably give you something that you didn't already have.
Have you tried techniques like that, Laura?
No, I love that idea.
Yeah, I love it.
Try it. I do, I journal when I remember, and when I think about it, I don't have a good established practice, but it helps. But I think one of the things that I did before I decided to kind of start my business was I went to a mindfulness event run by Reefa Thorpe Tracy. Reefa's great. She runs a nice network in Brighton called She Says for women working in digital. And she she's really into like manifesting, which like I'm always a little bit wary about stuff like that. I feel like, yeah, that works for other people, but it's not for me. But she kind of, what was really useful was writing down things that I wanted from work, and actually sitting and taking some time to really think about it. It sounds ridiculous, but it's not something I'd ever done before. Another part of it, we were talking about this a bit earlier on, was just thinking about like what my teenage self would have thought about what I was doing at that point in my life, and like what she would have thought was like cool, what she would have been proud of or interested in. Like my teenage self is quite a good barometer for a lot of stuff.
Well, you were saying you feel like you're getting more on it as you get older. What would your teenage self be saying?
Oh my god, you sold out, man. No, yeah, well I'm 40 this year, so I'm having like midlife crisis, and I'm really reflecting more than I ever have before. But I think like I don't have the techniques. I love the techniques because I feel like I'm definitely ready to do that. But I've always worked places where you have like a really structured like end of year review thing, and you do your thing and all that stuff. I think like those are the only things I've genuinely ever spent time on for this. I think for me it's just honestly through time, which is not a helpful discussion for this because I can't just be like, I've worked for so long, I've learned. But I think it just comes through like, it is like confidence and experiencing, and I have so much admiration. When I was like in my 20s, like 25, I've had no sense of this and no like self-awareness, and I was like worked with people who said things like work hard, play hard, and you're like, oh my god. things like that, and their culture was so different. And I feel like now there probably is like a seismic shift, which we're probably going to talk about loads, but I honestly can't pin down like what the things are that make me do it. Maybe I've just become more rigid, but yeah, totally, I'm way more right on. We were saying this, like why do so many people gravitate towards this career choice if you tend to be a bit more like mindful and a bit more progressive and a bit more like left-leaning, but not to generalise, but like things like that. It's a really interesting thing that this is all the kind of space, like you wouldn't necessarily get this for other disciplines, so I'm always interested like why the content people were thoughtful people.
I guess like we were actually having this discussion earlier, but do you think it's also because people who are naturally get interest in communication gravitate towards content or marketing type roles, because it's, and I hate it when people say it's a soft skill, because I wouldn't say it's a soft skill. I think it's quite a hard skill being a good communicator, but maybe there's something in that compels people to do that or make complex things simpler. And I think that lends itself to like the thoughtfulness that you need to be.
And then you just come out the other end and you're a socialist.
It's
just like a natural progression. It's just what happens.
It may be.
But yeah, you reflect so much, then you're like, oh yeah, I'm not going to stand for this. This is great. Yeah.
So talking of reflection, I'd like to know what each of you, what does mindful leadership mean to you in the kind of day-to-day role that you're doing? Who wants to take that first?
I think when I was thinking about this and when I was looking at your discussion guide, I started thinking about the word mindful, which I got really like a lot about, because it does sound quite passive, and it sounds like you're going to listen to Headspace and you're going to be like really and be kind. And the mantra of be kind, I get really angry with. So I feel like for me it's more like it's actually quite an active thing, like actually being that kind of person, trying to be that kind of person is actually really like the word intentional, which you talk about a lot, I love, because I think it is like an active thing where you have to be extremely conscious, extremely self-conscious, and also like being an empath has become a bit of a joke, but like you do need to be a people person and understand and like be curious about people and that kind of thing. So for me it is being intentional in that side of things, and like I joked before about working with people who say silly things or have like very careerist views, and when you become a leader you're all about you're projecting yourself upwards, but then just genuinely forget about the team. And you're like, I work with so many people who are like, I'm an inspirational leader, but have no consideration for the community, like no consideration for the team around them. And it's like trying to undo all that. For me it's undoing all that stuff that you kind of get taught, like this is what a good leader is. Like a good leader is a lot of bullshit, and you're like, no, it's not about that. So for me it's like that's an active thing, and like community in a place like that doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen by default, and it's not a passive thing. I feel quite strongly about it, in case you can't tell.
I know, but I guess, yeah, I think it is about, it is quite active, I guess, even though it doesn't sound active. I think it is, because you have to, it's just, I don't know, I think it's just like thinking about, it's like self-awareness and considering what you do, and you know, that's active.
And how many leaders in design, digital, are not self-aware? As soon as you start noticing, you're like, wow, how did you get to that job? But yeah, a joke.
Interesting.
Yeah, I do agree with you on the passive and the active side. I think being a mindful leader, it's a funny concept, isn't it? Do you know what? I think the most important thing is being able to stop and being comfortable with taking a step back and being able to see the bigger picture. And I don't think many leaders do that well or well enough. Particularly, I get it, you're in busy jobs and there's lots going on and budgets being cut, and I get that, but I think it's really important to be able to step back, stop, and sort of see the bigger picture. And the act of being able to do that actually takes a lot of effort and energy to be able to stop. I mean, when was the last time anybody here really stopped during like the working day and took a step back? I mean, I don't think I did today. It was a crazy day. But I think the ability to be able to do that is really important. And as you said there as well, you know, Ellen, it's about seeking to understand before being understood. I think that's a really important quality that somewhere in the last years has got a bit lost. I think it was there during COVID. You saw the shift of leaders being really empathetic and really leaning in. And I feel like it's almost about, well, it's business as usual. COVID's finished. Now it's about productivity. Let's get on with it. And it's like, well, that's not how things work, you know. And I think it's about how do you bring some of that really good empathetic behaviour and understanding that there was into this next phase. That's important. So, yeah.
Do you think there's like a nurturing element as well? Because I'm just thinking of you, like you're very, you know, you're a leader in the community. You're very generous with like how you share things and share information. I feel like there's like a nurturing element there as well. Do you think?
Maybe. I've never thought about it like that actually. I guess it kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier about why people are drawn to this discipline. I guess what I always think about is, and the thing that I really love about content people is they want to make everything better. Like the intention behind a lot of our work is to try and improve things for users, to create a better experience. And I think that's something why it kind of appeals to, you know, a certain type of people, like that it feeds into that desire to make things better and to be able to do it with your work is quite satisfying. And it's something that I've massively benefited from in the community throughout my career, is the fact that people are so generous and giving with their time. So I felt like a lot of responsibility to kind of give something back. And I think a big part of it is about being mindful. Like I think about like when I did like a mindfulness course, and like they talk about it in yoga and stuff as well, like actionless action, which sounds a bit weird, but it's like that, you know, when you're being really kind of mindful in a situation, when you know you're working with other people, you're just being present in that moment. So it means you're really listening to what's being said to you. You're not just thinking about, you know, the next thing you want to say, and you're not kind of looking at the situation and kind of like a shark sniffing the water for blood and looking for a weakness and how to kind of get your point across. Like you're really trying to kind of listen and understand what's going on with the people who are around you. And I suppose that is kind of nurturing, like wanting to kind of put that care into other people. When you kind of put the question to us beforehand, I thought about it a lot, and I thought about one of my clients actually. He's the CEO of a housing and social care charity, and like he's one of the most interesting leaders I've ever worked with. Like everything that organisation does, like if they've got a nice big office and they kind of hold loads of community events, and he pops into everything just to say hi. He knows lots of their clients, like long-term clients, kind of people who are in their housing by name. And like when you talk to him, his focus is only on you. It's amazing. Like he's so present in everything he does. And I did like a big piece of kind of research for them among their peers, and like it came back that one of the biggest risks to the organisation was if he left, because just that relationship and the way that he leads people, it is really mindful, and it makes such a big impact on that organisation. So that's what really kind of sprung to mind for me.
That's amazing. Do you think, like, I was sort of listening to what you were all just saying there, and I think, like, generally, like, content designers and content design leaders, we tend to be people pleasers, and we're so busy, like, trying to, you know, please everyone and do the right thing. Like, it's really hard to sometimes just take a step back and, I think, like you were saying, stop, but self-reflect and think about yourself and get feedback on yourself and understand, like, what you could be doing more of, or what, you know, what your things that you might be missing because you're so busy trying to kind of people please. Is that something any of you have become kind of conscious of in your work, and how have you sort of done that? Like, you know, I need to do some self-reflection now, I need to get some feedback. Like, I think that's quite a hard thing to do as a leader, because the worry about, oh, what if I get negative feedback, you know?
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? I mean, I always say all feedback is good feedback. You know, if it's delivered with the intention in which it should be, which is, you know, to help somebody else grow and you know, to support somebody else. That's not the case in all organisations, right? So that's a bit tricky. But I think this is an interesting point around feedback and the people pleasing piece. I work in communications, so I'm in corporate affairs, and of course you're working with senior executives, and you know, they want this in their script or that in their script, and they want the video to look like this or whatever. And I think there's this pressure of, when do you make a choice? What lines are you drawing for yourself, where you will sort of say, actually, I'm going to step into my power and actually be really deliberate about what I think is the right thing to do here or not. And I think sometimes it can be really tricky to be okay with saying no, because it feels like you're letting someone else down. Or personally, for me, sometimes it can feel like they might think that I'm not able to do this.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. It's because actually, my professional opinion, this is not the right thing to do. Or you've given it to me too late, or we can't execute it in the best way, whatever. And I think it's a lot of the challenges around, with content and comms particularly, we're often included too late in the process for some of this. And I found myself strategically over the last 8 years making sure that I've built my business acumen a lot over that period of time, so that I can be regarded more as a business person that does communications really well than a communications person that just comes in at the end of the process. So I think some of this is also, it's your own values and your own projections, but I think there are ways to be able to manoeuvre in such a way that you sort of gain that respect as well for the professional expertise that you do bring as a content creator, a communicator, or any other discipline that you work in.
We had this very similar conversation before we started. We were talking about, I think it's because the way content design specifically emerged was all like, we need to advocate, we need to get in the meetings, we need to do everything, and that was really the message for so long. And it's like, oh my god, I have to go to every single meeting. And then actually it's like, just don't. Like, seriously. But also, like, just do less, but do it better. And one, like, it's such a gear shift from fighting. Someone wrote recently that, like, I'm not doing any more content design tours where I'm explaining what we do, and I'm doing
it. Felicia Wu, I think.
It's just like, fuck yeah, like, seriously, don't, like, you do not have to do that anymore. So it is just being, like, the intentionality thing again, but, like, I'm going to do less, I'm going to do better, I'm going to go where the strategic things are, because I know that makes more sense, but also, like, where the better people are, where the people who actually understand what I do, where they'll work with me well, where I don't have to, like, explain my job for 10 minutes at the beginning of every call and be like, no, I'm not a copywriter, Jesus Christ. Like, so it is having that shift is, like, a real, like, I only really had that freedom in the job I'm in now, and as soon as you have that gear shift, you're like, oh wow, this is so much better. And you can still do, like, try and support the rest, and there's ways you can do it, and it can all be scalable and all that, like, practical process stuff. But just don't, like, saying no, but you do have, this is such a privilege thing, you have to have the environment where you can do that. So I totally appreciate if you don't have a manager that allows it, or you don't feel like you've got the acumen to be like, this is not the right decision, it's really hard. So I totally appreciate that that's an environment thing. But I think once you've sort of set out your intention, or you can at least explain the value of doing that way, that will like shift, that will change everything, and then you aren't scrambling for meeting invites, which you remember for ages that was the thing. It was like look in people's calendars and invite yourself to meetings, and it's like don't do that. Like, no, don't. Like seriously, go and find the nice people that you're like, oh, they actually want to work with me. So yeah,
it's quite like, I think is a like a I don't know, like I think there's like a pivotal moment I had when I sort of changed how I lead, because I was thinking about I was getting like I suppose sort of too emotionally invested in my work, and you know you were saying getting frustrated when you're not added in the right meetings, and then there's like I guess there's like a bit of a tipping point where I was like, why am I letting this job upset me? And there's like a real kind of realisation. I think I read something that was talking about the difference between your job and your career, and it's like the job's the thing you're doing now, it's not your career. Like, and honestly, like it's so not worth getting that emotionally invested in the job, because it's so small in the grand scheme of your career. And that kind of changed how I lead, because I was like, well, you know, there's some things I can't change. I've just got to figure out how to work within this environment. And it just gave me such a new lease of life, because I was like, well, at the end of the day, I close my laptop, I walk away, I don't care, you know, I'm not going to be there forever. And I think, you know, Rashmi, you were saying earlier that you've got this kind of horizon, like 12 months, 18 months. It's like, yeah, what's the worst thing that can happen is you kind of walk away from something, and you know your career's kind of bigger than that. And I think that really changed how I lead. And yeah, I don't know if you've had any, Laura, if you had sort of any pivotal moments like that have changed how you lead.
Yeah, so I think the pivotal moment for me was over the last few years. My husband Tom, just out of nowhere, got very, very sick and is disabled, and I'm a carer, unpaid carer now. And I don't recommend this route, it's not a great route. But there was just a period, like not long after kind of dealing with like the worst phase of his illness, where I was still like, you're self-employed, you don't have a choice, you have to keep working. He was really ill and needed a lot of help, and I was just at absolute rock bottom, because I still felt like I could put all that energy into work, which like I could do that before that, because I don't have children, like I'm self-employed, like I love what I do, it was fine, like it wasn't causing me any problems. But with the added stress of everything at home, I just couldn't do it anymore. So that just kind of put a really firm boundary around what work could be. But the other thing was just then from that point on being okay, like I've got to really kind of take care of my well-being and my mental health, and like reduce the amount of stress that I'm under. And I definitely can't say that I'm perfect at this, it's like an ongoing practice, but just being really sensible about the work that I took on, and thinking about, well, actually is this something where I've got a really good chance of success? Because the stuff that I feel happy about and I enjoy most is when it's in my kind of circle of, there's this thing you can do like the circle of concern. I said this so many times, I've given this as a talk and I can't remember it. Control, influence, concern, there you go. So concern, like things that you worry about that you can't do anything about. Influence, things where you maybe can do something by working with other people, by using your influence. And control, things like that are really kind of in your remit, in your lane, where you can do a lot. So I just try and do things that are mostly in my circle of control. And if a project feels a bit off, if I think I'm not going to be able to work very well with those people, I say no. If I feel like they haven't got the brief together, they're being unrealistic with kind of what they're trying to achieve, like, and I can't argue them down from that, I don't do it either. So just putting a lot of boundaries around what I say yes to, and saying no to a lot more stuff.
Yeah, and I think to your point earlier, Rashmi, about learning to say no, like that's a hard skill to learn, I think, you know. I find it hard to say no. I think that's just because I'm really conflict avoidant. And I've kind of, you know, sort of, I don't always practice what I preach, but I sort of try to tell my team to say, you know, it's not always a no, it's just I can't do that right now, or I can do this, but then other stuff is got to give. And I think you're obviously having to like make like really clear priorities now on your time. You can't like, you know, this you've been forced into it unfortunately in that situation, but you've got to really have like very clear boundaries and priorities.
Yeah, I don't worry about work anymore, genuinely, ever.
Yeah.
So
well, it also has
good outcome
puts in perspective for you, I guess, as well.
Yeah,
so,
definitely. Yeah.
Rashmi, I'm really interested in something we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, actually, when we were chatting, and we were sort of talking about the concept that you don't always have to do more to be a better leader. You don't always have to like you know, there's this perception, I'm not doing enough, and like, and sometimes it's just about doing some things differently rather than doing more or trying to, you know, take more onto our plate. So is that kind of is that sort of the ethos that Leading Deeply came about?
Yeah, I mean, it's partly that. I mean, Leading Deeply, it's a leadership development collective. I've co-founded with a friend of mine that I worked with at Unilever 15 years ago as well. And I think it's a bit out of the space of this whole idea of going beyond your brain, and that human knowing goes way, way beyond just the cognitive, even though that's the predominant way that we understand things in the world in general. And so we wanted to bring a different approach to leadership, which said, what choices might emerge, or what things might you do differently if you actually tapped into 4 other ways of knowing? And there's a ton of research about this, but it's knowing through your body, knowing through your emotions, knowing through interacting with each other, what do you learn from someone else, and also like the spiritual knowing, that sense of when you're walking down the street and you feel like somebody's looking at you, or when you just have an instant reaction, or just something doesn't feel right, or you feel connected to somebody that you've never met before, but you feel that. I mean, I think in some way we've all had these kind of feelings, but we just maybe part them or whatever. We said, well, what if you tap into all of those different ways of knowing? What might emerge, and how might that knowing give you different choices and different options? And actually, we've just started to do this work now with groups of leaders, and we held one of our first workshops yesterday with a group of 15 leaders across lots of different industries, and it was unbelievable. In 2 hours, through some of the small techniques we did, and we did the free-fall writing, we did another thing on systems and moving around and energy flow, how people's perspective changed through a 2-hour workshop where we were pretty still, self-reflective, and started to get into a different space outside of your normal way of thinking. And these were leaders from big organisations, you know, energy firms, FMCG, technology, people that aren't used to not doing anything for 2 hours. And I don't mean not doing anything. Of course, we did a lot of work, but it wasn't this kind of work. It was this kind of work, and that's the stuff that we're doing in this space. We want to bring that to more organisations, because I just really believe that can unlock a different way of being in the world, and a different way of leadership that frankly I think the world could do a little bit more.
Yeah, I bet they were really out their comfort zones.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, people are quite honest with that. This feels really uncomfortable. Like, when are we going to get to like the slides? Like, there aren't any slides. Sorry. But it's you know, we are so conditioned to be doing things all the time that it's quite we have to unlearn some things, and that's uncomfortable. But it's also really good.
Quite exposing for people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you haven't got your slides, what have you?
You've got something to hide behind. I went to this workshop once, and it was a presentation workshop, and we got there, and it was like chairs in a circle, like an AA meeting, and everybody was so uncomfortable with that, because you're so used to and that was the point, right? It was just to get people used to feeling uncomfortable and exposed and vulnerable. But it was just those little things, like physical things, can make such a massive difference to like how your brain works.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, we're coming towards the end of the discussion, so I'd love to know, I'm going to start with you a little on this one, because I know you've got young kids as well, but like, how do you balance the sort of stresses and strains of like work life? I think, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, often when we think about mindfulness and self-reflection, you go into your head and you start over-analysing everything, and you start thinking, oh, I shouldn't have said that at work today, and you kind of almost like take that home with you, I think, a little bit, because you're almost like reflecting and analysing too much. So how do you sort of do you have a way of compartmentalising? Do you have a way of like processing everything in, you know, and then getting it out of your head and then moving on? Like, how do you balance that like reflection with how? You don't figure it out yet either.
You have boundaries. You don't have Slack on your phone. Right. That's like game changer. Like when I started this job, everyone's like, no, I need Slack. When I started at John Lewis, for some reason I didn't download it straight away, and then I was like, I have Slack on my phone. I don't need it. And I was like, this is great. So I have full on boundaries. Where if I'm on Slack, I'm in front of my laptop, which is kind of good, but at the same time, then if I'm out and I'm going to be a bit late coming back, I can't just pretend I'm here. So I'm like, oh, shit, I'm actually out. But yeah, I'm lucky. I still work mostly remote, so I do have like a little bit of blur where I don't have like a hard leave the office. I would totally switch off.
Yeah.
But I do not like. I have to collect a child from preschool at like 5:15, so I have no choice, and he is not tolerating. He's like, you're on the computer. Let me look at your computer. What's on the computer? So I have no choice.
Right.
That doesn't help anyone. But I think also like, I think this is again like working somewhere that doesn't expect you. Jesus Christ, workplaces that do not expect you to work out of hours. Like number one tip, like do not tolerate it. And that's obviously like, as this is about leaders, like that's the environment I am going to work in, because that's my viewpoint, like of the world. Like God, yeah, do not do that. So like setting those expectations for everyone else kind of creates the environment that you are not expected to do that. If you have an exception and shit, like we have to get something out and it's tonight and whatever, different. But like I think as soon as you start spiraling into that, it sort of drags everyone down with you. So you have to set like, this is the expectation. So I'm quite like full on. There was like a meme on Instagram that someone sent me, like did you want to see that, the millennial manager who's like, oh, you know, I don't log on weekends, I'm so cool. And I was like, shit, that is literally me. Because I'm like, I never do out of hours work. I'm like, no, Stacey, never. Like we work at John Lewis is very like, do not work.
Very 9 to 5.
Yeah, old school. And then when you like, excellent, work at these places, do not work at a tech company that expects you to work 14 hours a day. Do not. Because it's like, for what? So that's a long ramble about, I shut my laptop, I turn it off, I have to feed my child. Like, Jesus Christ, this is where we should be. I feel very strongly about it. How do you guys feel about it?
Yeah, it's a good one, isn't it? I completely agree with you on boundaries.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I'm right really old school. I've got two phones.
Oh no.
I've got a work phone and a personal phone, and that works so well for me, because when I'm not working this phone, I've got nothing on my phone that's related to work, and that's so important. I think the biggest insight for me was when I left Philips, I had a gap in between, and I was playing with the kids one day, Barbie or whatever. I hate Barbie. I love Barbie, but I hate it. But and they said to me, oh, Mum, it's really good how you're playing. And I was like, what do you mean? I'm just doing the same thing I've always done. No, like, you're really playing now, like, you're actually a character, you're speaking the character, you're acting it, you're not doing other things. I was thinking, well, what was I doing? And then, because I never had my phone with them, and they was like, no, but sometimes you're not looking, or you're not paying attention. I was thinking, they mean that I'm just distracted.
Yeah.
And it's so true, and that will always stick in my mind, like, yeah, if I'm going to play Barbie, I'm going to play Barbie properly, you know? Why not? because actually, when you give your time, it comes back to the mindfulness and being present in that moment for those 10 minutes. That means a lot to someone, whoever it is you're giving your time to. Give it well, and remove the things that mean that you can't. So I think ever since then I've been quite strict about boundaries, and I'm a solo parent as well, so it's all on me, and I am just very much like, I will not have energy for my two kids at the weekend if I'm exhausted from work. So I go to bed on time. I make sure I do other things. I get a babysitter, so just to keep myself feeling like, healthy and well, and like you say, just being able to sort of enjoy life as well. But it's not easy. It's a lifelong quest.
Yeah, I think you have to have like rituals almost as well sometimes to stop, because I mean, yeah, like you, like sometimes my kids will be like, how was your day at work? And I was like, well, actually, I'm just being polite. Switch off. How do you compartmentalise, or don't you?
No, I do. So I think like part of it is definitely a ritual. Is I don't work at home, and I know that's probably sounds like dreadful to lots of people who really like that, but. I have like I share a studio space with a really grumpy architect. He's on the phone all day yelling at builders. It's amazing. It's a 25-minute, 30-minute walk away from home, and like that walk to and from, like just putting on an audiobook or a podcast is really nice and makes a big difference. And then I guess the other thing is just kind of finding time to do things for me. Like I've got out of the habit, so I need to get back into it. This is a good reminder. But like last year, I took like every Wednesday morning off, and I went and did this ecotherapy course, which oh my god, it's so good. If you're not the kind of person that responds to normal therapy, like really like look into it. It's amazing. was just incredible. Like having like 2 or 3 hours like every Wednesday where I just did something for myself, like made everything in my life better. So I need to do that again.
Yeah, I totally agree with the like having the separate workspace. So I invested in having half my garage turned into an office last year. So I have a physical lock the door, close the door, walk away. And at the weekend it makes so much difference because I just, it's like my office is locked. I don't go in there at the weekend. And it just feels like that kind of mental break, which really, really helps.
Definitely.
I want to make sure we've got time for questions actually from the audience. So let's hand over to the audience. Has anybody got any questions for us?
I just want to say thank you so much, by the way. I enjoyed like every moment, and it was really, really great to hear all your different experience and opinions on this. It was great. So I'm I'm quite a new leader, and I'm finding it's quite difficult for me to balance the business needs that I'm getting from the sort of heads of and what my team needs. And I find that often, I mean, you have answered this a bit with, turning Slack off, not having it on your phone, that kind of thing. But I find that I'm often stepping in as an almost like protective person because the business needs are asking too much of the people that I'm managing, and so I don't want them to do it, but I'm doing it. So how do you...
Could be their shit filter.
Well,
shit umbrella. I think shit umbrella is the expression.
I feel like I'm the shit umbrella.
Yeah. Welcome to leadership.
Thank you. Is there something that exists that like it means that you don't have to do that?
I think I really feel you. I would say if you're relatively new, like stop it now, because I feel like it's only going to get worse. Then people will assume that you're absorbing this extra work, so they're like, oh, you can take it.
Yeah.
And like you're doing exactly the right thing, like protecting the team, 100%, like number one, because we could get so much crap in, and that's like my priority is always like protecting everyone's time, headspace, work-life balance, like just general work balance. Like we get asked to do too much, no, but like it's the same no. You start saying no. So that's really brutal. But like, are they asking you to do good stuff? Like, you can't do everything. You either haven't got enough people, or you need to like negotiate with your boss around what's an acceptable amount of demand.
Yeah.
There's so many things. Start managing incoming requests in a different way, like prioritize differently. But yeah, do not to pick up the work because you are setting yourself up to have a burnout. Please do not do that. I don't know if everyone's. I'm hard line on this stuff. That's why you asked me here. I do not tolerate this.
Yeah, I think what's important is to sort of contract. I sort of kind of love and hate that word, but sort of contracting with your key stakeholders or the business needs around what's feasible is really important.
Yeah.
And I think actually, if you do that in a proactive way, I think people really do respect that in terms of I've got to manage my resources and the budget, and sort of I'd really like to understand how we can do this together so I can best support your needs and manage the team. I think if you can step into some of those conversations, maybe with a couple of allies, like maybe peers, I think that peer network, we often underestimate how important that is, that your peers sort of have your back or can help sort of cover when you need to cover. And so I'd say pick up some really good peer sort of allies that you can rely on, as well as your line manager, of course. But personally, I've always found peers more useful than line managers. No disrespect at all, but they're often off doing other stuff, and the people I can really lean on are my peers.
Plus, they're probably going through the
So
same.
yeah, you too.
Probably going through the same thing as you, and
Yes.
you kind of need each other's support. I think that's one of the most important things when you're new into leadership is that you have other people that are going through the same thing. Bit of a plug for Tempo, but I think that's why people love the Slack community on Tempo so much, because there's always someone that's going through something similar, and you need that kind of support network around you for sure.
It's like the common, like I mentioned, like the common content thing is there's just not enough. So it's probably because there's fewer of you than there is of the demand. Unless that's going to change, you like you said, contract, call it an SLA or whatever. Just be like, this is how we work. This is our process. This is when we'll get back to you. Otherwise, the shit umbrella, it overfloweth. I don't know. It's going too far. But yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.
You have a question?
Thank you very much for sharing. It's a pleasure to listen to you. So I wanted to ask you about assumptions. So when you were moving into the role of leader or transitioning into the role of leader, what were your assumptions about what this means to be a leader for you and what it turned out to be?
It's a good question, isn't it?
You're welcome.
What assumptions did you have moving into leadership and what turned out to be true?
Do you know what, I think my biggest reflection is when I first moved into a leadership role, like a line managing team of 12 and quite senior, I made the error of still doing all the work. Because I love the work. I love the work. I still love the work. But I made the error of still wanting to, maybe wanting or needing to do the work and not realise that my actual role is the strategic direction and the vision of where this team's going and how it contributes to the business. And then the second most important thing is coaching, empowering, enabling my team and unblocking things along the way so that they can be successful. And when I came back on my second mat leave and realised that, and then it was like night and day. I was so much happier, my team was so much happier, and things really went quite well. But I had that misconception, or I held on to doing the work.
I think it's really hard though. It's really hard to learn to delegate because often you think, oh, it's just going to be quicker for me to do it. But the problem is you're then not empowering your team and you're not giving them those opportunities to learn and grow. So, you know, and then there's a risk that you're kind of micromanaging a little bit because you still want to be in the detail.
Definitely.
And no one likes a micromanager. So I think it's really hard to learn to delegate, but you've got to put trust in your team, and if you've got a good team, you know, you should be able to trust them to get on with things and not feel frightened about asking them to do things. That's what they're there for.
I think loads of assumptions about types of people and people. There still is perceptions around like what professionalism is and what leadership is and what you perceive, like what people picture in their head. So I think like these kind of things, and obviously like the tempo and the fact that it's like 4 women sitting here and stuff like that, like undoing that, and I think that's still like a long way to go. Because I thought I'd really have to I do edit myself furiously, and I'm probably quite a different person out of work than I am in work to a degree. But actually I think there is still a way to be, it sounds so cheesy, be yourself at work and like talk about things that might seem a bit more radical or a bit more like not traditional leadership. Like I do not read leadership books. I think I wrote this in my notes because I think like they set a very specific type of person that you should be, and do we just think that we're going to read it at home and you're going to learn it by osmosis and all that? Like, why do people read it? Why do people read that? What's the one that everyone's reading at the moment? The micro habits one.
Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Like things like that, I think really set you up because they will feed you the assumptions. These are the things you need to do, and like just trying. I think I thought I had to do that as well, and I think I'm not that person at work. I'm still to a degree true to myself, so I think like actually realising you could be a leader and have a vague sense of integrity is a really nice thing to realise, because you're like, I don't need to be a sociopath. Like, I can be myself, and I can lead with just caring about people more than other stuff. I think the word even the word leadership, I'm like, don't know. It gives you such a specific idea, doesn't it, of what it is. Yeah, I don't even feel like a leader. Oh my god.
That's like me though. I still don't feel like a mum, and my kids are like at college in denial about everything.
I can't.
I know I already asked a question. Can I just ask a follow-up question of what you just said? Because I found it really interesting. I find it quite hard to make sure that I am like truly myself in every setting. So I find like with my direct reports, I'm able to be myself and I'm able to be empathetic and who I really think I am. But then when I end up in the sort of other side of things, being in meetings about budgets and the scary things, I find I almost feel like there's not a easy place for empathy and that kind of thing, and you almost end up I mean, also it's largely men, and then like maybe 1 or 2 women, which I don't know if that is why, but anyway, I just find that like that empathy and the kind of care of people's day-to-day lives goes out the window, and it's all about numbers. And I don't know what my question is anymore. I'm just but like, how can you make sure that you are yourself in all these different places that you have to be? That's a loaded question. Oh my god.
Oh my god. What does anyone think?
I do think that's the kind of scenario where you find yourself being like the most likely to be a shit umbrella. That was definitely my experience in a couple of roles. You know, the first 2 leadership roles I had, I was like, it was very much about numbers and business and not a lot of kind of empathy, particularly when things got difficult, which they often did, like economically with everything that's gone over, like the entire period of my career. It's just been one massive like financial roller coaster. And yeah, I think that scenario makes it so hard because what maybe people higher up the chain are looking at you for is business acumen and common sense, and you've got this attitude that the way you need to kind of manage the people below you is by being kind of nurturing and warm and looking after them. It's really difficult. I don't think I have an answer about what to make it better. Every time I'm on a panel or I do a talk, I tell people to quit their job. Sometimes that, I think that's a good sign that you're working in the wrong kind of environment for you. If you really feel like you can't make any inroads and that you can't be yourself, sometimes that's telling you something really important. I'm not telling you to quit your job. I'm just saying that's been a learning for me, that was a sign that I shouldn't have ignored in a couple of jobs, that I was in the wrong place. It wasn't the good fit for me and my values, because I couldn't be myself, and I couldn't kind of be authentic.
It's quite stressful not being able to be yourself as well. Like whether that's in a relationship, whether that's at work, whatever it is. Like it actually leads to it can lead to anxiety and depression, because you feel like you're not like being who you want to be or who you should be. And I think you can only do that for so long.
Yeah.
You know. I think.
Also, like maybe your strengths will be more the people side, and there'll be people who will be really like great with the numbers, and that will be their strength. So like, just you can go on a journey of like self-awareness where you'll be like, oh, this is what I contribute in these meetings. I might be not necessarily like not contributing anything, but it might be the one where actually you take a further back seat and you're like, oh, this isn't where my strengths are. Like that's okay as well. Like I feel like if I go to talks about budget, I'm in a job now where I'm technically a leader, but I handle 0 budget, and I'm like, this is amazing. I have no responsibility for because in previous jobs I held all the budget and I was like, don't know what I'm doing, don't actually understand, don't know where it's going, maybe get some money, get some contract, I don't know. So but that might be it. But then I don't know, it's hard, it's really hard, because I was talking about earlier, I'm at the stage where I really want to demonstrate value, so it's less to do with me holding the budget and more be this is the financial return on everything we're doing and why, which I feel like it's lots of content people maybe are doing more because you're having to justify your presence and why you have roles and things like that. Yeah. And that's a path. I totally feel you. But yeah, I don't. But this is where we talk about non-negotiables. If you do not want to negotiate on being an empathetic person who's authentic to yourself, fuck no, don't compromise on that. Do snaps in meetings and then see how your CFO reacts, and then he'll be like, and then you'll be like, you are my person. And then you start a drag race channel on Slack. Have you got one at your work? Oh my god, are you in the drag? Yeah. As soon as I found the people who like drag race, I was like, you are my people. And then you have a little network of pretty cool people. But yeah,
you have a lunch one as well.
Oh yeah, I started a What's for Lunch Slack channel because I just like talking about food. But yeah, that's a self-awareness thing, isn't it? So you're like, this is where I am. You can't learn being a people person. You can learn how to talk bullshit in numbers meetings. You totally can.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
No, but
I think that's what Rashmi was saying earlier though about being a business person. Because I know it's really dull, no one wants to be a business person, that isn't why we got into our jobs. But there's a theory that when you move into leadership, your first team is actually the people that your peers or your people that you're facing into. And that, I don't necessarily buy into this, but then your second team are the people working under you. Because actually, the facing out bit is just as important as the managing down bit. And I think that's one of the things I have made the mistake of before, is I spend too much time like managing downwards and not enough time investing in building relationships and facing outwards. And I think that's the difference is between people who are just kind of looking after their immediate team and the people that are actually being able to like land strategy or demonstrate the value of their team to the wider organisation, is that like outward facing bit. And it's I still find that really hard. It's a really hard thing to.
That's a good point.
I think that's coming back to the question about assumptions. I think one of my assumptions about leadership was that it was all about managing down.
Yeah.
And I think I realised I'm not enjoying this. I don't want to do this anymore. And I think it took me a really long time to realise that consultancy is leadership as well, like what I'm doing with clients now, and that is all about like leading up, leading around, rather than kind of leading a team of people working for you. And again, I think it's actually like this kind of role is a really good fit for people who struggle in that kind of more atypical environment where you start feeling quite blocked, because you only get brought in to consult if people want to listen to what you've got to say. And I see a lot of the time that content designers, content strategists on the teams that I work with, sometimes they get a bit annoyed with me because I can say something that they've been telling everybody for ages, and they'll listen to me because you listen to consultants. Some organisations really care about what consultants say, and they don't care what their employees say to them.
Any other questions? Yes.
I don't know if it's a bit off topic. Thank you everyone for great tips, great discussions. My name is Charlotte Clausen. I volunteer in an organisation called the ISTC, the Institute for Scientific and Technical Communicators. And we are a member organisation, volunteer role, where we have very few roles that are paid. We have a newsletter editor, we have a journal editor, and we are using an admin company. But we are thinking that to provide more activities for our members and more advantages for our members, we might actually have to consider having in some paid work. And the challenge that always comes up when you have volunteers and then you start to have paid staff. Do you have any tips on how to go about that if we go that route, and how to do that in a good way where we have the right balance and everyone being happy?
Interesting.
Well, that's tricky, isn't it? I would say, and the world of work is changing, isn't it? Of course, and of course, money, given that we all live in the capitalist, is important. But even at Unilever, we're finding that different people are motivated by different things. And so I think one thing I'd say is thinking about what can you reward and recognise volunteers with that they attach value to.
We haven't had a problem getting volunteers. That's not a problem. If you just say, we would like more volunteers. No, but if we say, hey, we would like something to do this specific thing for the next 4 weeks, and you will be working with this person who's already at it, then they will actually happily sign up. And they might take on more work when they realize that, I actually have a freedom to do more things that I wanted to do. So that bit is not difficult. I'm more talking about managing in when it's about, who should actually be paid, who should not be paid. If we start to take in more paid people for work that's coming closer to what we are doing. For the newsletter and our quarterly journal, it's clear that those are things that have to be done at a certain time. That's why it's paid for. While the ones of us who arranged our annual conference this year, we didn't get paid. But that's also, of course, it had to be done for the conference. But most of the work that needed to be done, we could balance it. And what got done was what got done. Nobody could say that we had to do a specific thing at a specific time, except we just had to get the conference running on the day. And of course, an admin team, nobody wants to do accounting if they're a content designer or a technical writer or an illustrator.
Well, you need to pay for, I guess, for specialisms. Like, it's reasonable. It's reasonable that you would pay people for specialist skills, then expect everybody to be able to do everything.
It's about finding that right balance, because we've been able to do an awful lot with very little money because people have volunteered, and we've had people who are really successful in their careers coming and volunteering, because this is non-profit, this is about doing something for the community. So if that changes slightly and we start, for example, to get so let's say we want to improve our website. We have a lot we would like to do, but it also needs to be managed. We can't just say, hey, we need 50 volunteers, because we can't have 50 volunteers to come and update our website. We will have to have at least 1 or 2 people running the show, so there's a direction of what we're doing. But if we start hiring people for specific jobs, when does it get to that tipping point where there's going to be a challenge where there is some sort of imbalance between people who are paid staff and people who are volunteers?
Sure. I've seen a little bit of this kind of second-hand working with charities, because in loads of charities, you know, maybe they start off as a more grassroots organisation where lots of work's done by volunteers, and they grow and things professionalise and they need to bring in the specialist skills. And I've seen a few examples where it gets really toxic. People who volunteered and have been really committed to doing something feel really betrayed. Like, that's not too strong a word for some of the things I've seen and heard about. So I think like a lot of consultation can really help to kind of explore with them like what they think would actually make sense to be a paid role, to work out where those boundaries are, to make sure that they're really clear about what's happening and why, and to kind of include them in the process, and like really kind of strong communication around it I think is quite important as well. But not something that I've got masses of experience of really.
No, I've seen a few things go haywire. I think the first thing we're actually doing is like we're actually defining to our members what roles are paid for and why, and actually communicating that, because many of our members don't know.
Yeah.
They also don't know how much work is actually volunteer work. So if they come and say, "Oh, why have you done this?" Say, "Oh, sorry, but actually, we've all been busy at our jobs. It might be done in the next 3-4 weeks." "Oh, you're not getting paid. We didn't know that." They don't would have said anything. So there's that thing as well.
I guess communication's kind of the key, isn't it? Understanding why.
Can I just ask one final question?
Yes, one quick one.
Hopefully a quick one. As a mindful leader, what have you found to be the most successful way to elevate your team?
To motivate your team.
Elevate.
Oh, elevate.
And give them a voice and show the great work that they're doing.
I guess just trying to.
Maybe not a quick one.
I think the biggest thing you can do for your team is empower them to talk about their work and share their work and be confident and comfortable, like putting themselves out there and promoting themselves and what they're doing. Because I think I've tended to find that I work in quite introverted teams, and people don't want to talk about their work or don't want to put themselves out there to present. And if you don't talk about what you're doing, no one's going to know about it. And I think that's the biggest way you can lift them up, to get them out there, get them out of their comfort zone, but just gently nudging them, not chucking them off a cliff. But I think the more you can nudge people to do that and feel comfortable and confident doing it, the more they'll just elevate themselves.
Yeah, that's a really good one because of the introverted thing, and also it generally becomes secondary. So you might have a designer who will always be the person presenting the work, and you're kind of like, why don't you have the content person talk about it? So having that kind of thing, and then really advocate for parity. So generally the content people are usually paid a little bit less, or they're seen as secondary, or we are the fewer in the team. So wherever we can, trying to say we're a designer as well, having that equivalency and not being seen as someone's unwanted younger sibling, which sometimes we are in the room. But that is a mindset change. So doing the small day-to-day things, sharing successes, but actually being I'm gonna really advocate you about what we do to leadership. That's a really mega thing. So I think as leaders you are responsible for that, and you are responsible for instilling that in other people. So fighting the fight all the time. I'm always fighting the fight. Always.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think also helping people. I think giving people space and an equal voice as well, particularly in team meetings. If I'm thinking of that, actually in communications, you often get quite extroverted people in the teams, and then it's really hard because everyone's just talking. And what ends up being my role often is just being able to hold the space and really value diversity of thought and opinions and backgrounds, and help create that mix within the team so that they all feel proud, and everyone feels proud and confident in what they're doing, and they're able to go out there and actually share that. But I think that's really important. I also think the most important thing is running really good team meetings where you're not late. That's one of the worst things I do. People are late to their own team meetings. But you're not late and you don't do the talking. The team meeting should be about everybody contributing. And I think that is it's so vital. It's such a small every week thing, but it really adds up to like the environment that people feel comfortable in as well. So,
All of that. The other thing, just a slightly different answer, like really good prioritisation. Like being really rigorous about it, like sitting down, planning out what you're going to do, making conscious choices about what's important and what's not, looking at how much time it's going to take, the reach it's going to have, the impact it's going to have. Like, I think that's good for the team overall, because then your output, the quality of it can really like ladder up quite a lot, and also you can give people really good answers for why you're not going to do what they want you to do.
Definitely. Cool. Well, we're running a little late, but thank you so much. I think it's been a really interesting and valuable conversation. So a massive thank you to all of you for coming as well. Yeah, really appreciate you coming out in this horrible weather, and hope you all have a safe journey home.